Our next story: how do I tell my 27F husband, 27M, that he is not more of a mom than me? Husband claims to be more of a mom. Me, 27 female, and my spouse, 27 male, have 2 kids, both boys, 1 and 2.5. I just barely returned to work 6 weeks ago after being laid off and unemployed for 10 months. I work Monday to Friday, from 9 to 5. He works Monday, Tuesday, Friday to Sunday, and then Wednesday and Thursday the following week, and it just alternates. He works 6 a.m. 6:30 p.m. On the days we both work, the kids are at a babysitter's. I drop them off and pick them up. On the days I work and he doesn't, he is home with them, and vice versa for me. This morning, my husband said to me, "I now watch the kids more than you. I'm more of a mom than you are." I was shocked that he said that. In the 10 months I was a stay-at-home mom and not working, I never once threw in his face that I was the primary caretaker or that I was any better than him. But he has this huge issue with being a parent alone. It's very, very frustrating. Whenever he is alone with the kids, he says he's mom for the day, as if watching his OAN kids is not just being a father or a parent, but he sees it as him being a mom, and a better one at that, according to him, when he doesn't have me to help. I don't know what to say to him or how to explain that he's not being a mom, he's being a parent, without him freaking out on me. He can't afford to keep me at home, so I had to get a job, and I never throw it in his face that he doesn't make enough, so I have to work and he has to also parent. I'm rambling, but I'm incredibly frustrated. Any advice? How can I kindly tell him he's just being a parent and not doing mom things? We are both responsible for taking care of and providing for them. Just because he now does it more often than me doesn't make him more of a mom. Our next story: yes, I got fat, well done, you have eyes. I almost always miss situations for a clapback, but I finally have one that fits. Background and context. So, I am from Eastern Europe but live in London. Back home, it's very common for people to comment on each other's weight, super positive if you've lost weight and super negative if you've gained weight. Gaining weight is seen as a moral failing. It's not about health at all. Recently, I had some very rapid weight gain, think 20 to 22 kilograms in less than 6 months. This is not normal, especially since I had no lifestyle changes or anything. Lo and behold, after battling the NHS for ages, I discovered I have thyroid issues and a brain tumor, both of which caused rapid weight gain. I'm currently working really hard to get that under control because it also means I can't lose the weight, even if I up my training to 4 to 5 times a week and reduce my calories to 1,000. Now, I've never been skinny, but I've been at a healthy weight for most of my life. I'm also very active. I've done martial arts for years, swim, and do Pilates, but I've never been skinny. Absolute moral failure on my part, honestly. The situation: I went back home this summer to Eastern Europe and was in a shop in my small town, doing some shopping to help my grandma. I got chatting with the cashier, who didn't recognize me and asked which family I'm from, etc. Normal. I haven't lived permanently in my hometown for almost 20 years. This guy next to her suddenly points at me. "I know who you are." It turns out he's some neighbor from 2 roads down, and I've seen him maybe 3 times in my life. He's my dad's generation. I greeted him politely, as is custom. He starts laughing at me and says, "Wow, you have gotten so fat. You've always been so normal, and now you're like this." Then he proceeds to puff out his cheeks and round his arms. The cashier was silent but uncomfortable. "But oh no," the man continues, "so now that you must have made the big bucks in London, you must be eating all the cakes like Marie Antoinette. What have you been eating over there?" This is an unusually rude comment, even for back home. Normally, people just say, "Oh, you've gotten fat," and move on to other topics. The cashier looked extra uncomfortable at this point but didn't say anything. Usually, in my country, talking openly about health issues is reserved only for the older generations. Are you young and have health issues? Can't be. Forget that. My time to shine. I turned to him all sorrowfully, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Yes, when you're battling a brain tumor, all kinds of things can happen." The dude froze halfway through miming how fat I'd gotten. He started stammering, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, it must be awful. Is the tumor benign?" "Yes." "Does he need to know that?" "No." Grandma later had a go at me about not telling people I was unwell, but oh well. I had some fun watching the blood drain from his face. Our next story: performer didn't realize I was the manager. Some years ago, my partner and I managed a bar, and we had live acts every Friday night. We had inherited a few bookings from the previous managers, but we honored them. One night, we had a comedian who, before us, had performed regularly at the bar. Anyway, at the time, I dressed like a student and had long, dyed hair. The regulars all knew I was the manager and had no problems with my appearance. The comedian starts his act, spots me collecting glasses, and proceeds to complain about students, how lazy they are. Look at this one. Can't get a proper job, what's with her hair, etc. No laughter, so he carries on insulting me. I smile and continue working. After the set, I walk over to give him his cash, and he's already talking about booking more dates with us. The joy as I said, "No thanks, I'm the manager, and I will never book you again." Watching his face fall was priceless. Our next story, Ida. For telling my sister my feelings about her have not changed after she confronted me for telling her fiancé the truth. 7 years ago, my sister had an affair with my now ex-husband. We were still married at the time, happily, I believed, and she became his mistress. I caught them together and cut both of them out of my life. I divorced him. I told her to stay away from me, and the two of them stayed together for a couple of years and had a child. My sister tried to reconcile with me 5 different times. I rejected her and told her I would never forgive her for what she did. I also called her some names and wished for bad things to happen to her. For example, I wished for him to cheat on her and ruin her life like they ruined mine. I told her she'd deserve it all and not to come crying to me if she caught anything from him. I got a full STD/STI panel after finding out he had been cheating on me with her. I tested negative, but you can never be too careful, and he never denied being unfaithful with others. I have been 100% no contact with my sister since, and I never met her child, not even when my ex cheated on her while she was pregnant, and she ended up homeless. I told our family members I would not tolerate being around her. A couple of weeks ago, her fiancé reached out to me. He was upset I hadn't attended the dinner my parents hosted to introduce him to the family. He said my sister was so hurt, that she had wanted me to forgive her, and that he felt I was unfairly holding a grudge over her dating an ex of mine. I corrected him and explained that she was not simply dating an ex of mine, she was his mistress. I told him I was still actively married to him at the time of their affair, and I caught them together in my home in my bed. He didn't reply. Several days later, my sister showed up, furious that I had told him the truth because he left her. She said I should be willing to put the past behind us, reconcile, and stop treating her like she's a criminal or evil. She said I act like she disgusts me. I told her that's because she does, and I said my feelings had not changed at all in 7 years. She cried and told me one of us could die without reconciling, but I said I wouldn't care. I told her she could die tomorrow, and I wouldn't regret my decision not to reconcile. I said I no longer cared what happened to her or whether she was okay. She left in tears. My parents were furious that she confronted me. They had already been disgusted by her being the other woman, and they said her confronting me for correcting her lies showed she hadn't grown at all. However, my aunt told me I had no reason to be so cruel after all this time. She said I was treating my sister worse than she treated me and should be ashamed of myself for saying I wouldn't care if she died. She said it was an awful thing to say to anyone, let alone family. Am I the A? Our next story, clock out exactly at the end of my shift? Okay. Some context. I work overnights at a well-known gym franchise that I will not name. My typical shift is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Usually, there are always supposed to be 2 people on the night shift together, but lately, my coworkers have been calling off a lot, causing me to be in the gym alone all night. My coworker, let's call her Sam, comes in at 6 a.m. when I get off. Here's the problem. Sam doesn't usually come in on time. She is almost always 10 to 15 minutes late. So, onto the problem. Since Sam comes in late, I tend to have to stay clocked in past 6 a.m. Additionally, since I'm usually alone at night, I can't get any important tasks done until Sam comes in. My boss noticed my time cards and got very upset that I haven't been clocking out right at 6 a.m. He made me feel really bad despite constantly being on the receiving end of all his scheduling messes. So I told him, okay, I will leave exactly at 6 a.m. So that's what I've been doing. I've been leaving the gym entirely unattended until someone gets there, and most of the time, no one does for a while. So now members are confused. My manager doesn't know what to do, considering he is the one who scolded me for staying past 6 a.m. He thought that I would just clock out and stay off the clock, but why would I do that? I was not going to take the blame for someone else consistently being late. He won't fire me or write me up because this is technically what he wanted. Our next story, my teacher was being misogynistic. Note, my teacher is a really bigoted, old Slavic man, and most girls in my school are fed up with him. We had a philosophy assignment to write about what the government had done, and I, being myself, wrote about inequality. My teacher said that women shouldn't be in charge and that they are not natural leaders. I was pretty frustrated with him, so I pulled up statistics and read aloud to the entire class the fact that we have fewer women in government than Morocco and Iran. Then I proceeded to read an article detailing all the hate crimes against women this year. Every single one. With all the details. After class, he called me over and said we would discuss this during our politics lesson. I told him this isn't politics, it's human rights. He called me smart for a woman, I'm a trans guy, but said I shouldn't concern myself with politics. So I asked him to define a woman. He said, easy, someone who can give birth. That was exactly what I wanted him to say. Due to my medical condition, it's best for me not to have kids. So I simply replied, I can't have kids. Does that make me a man? He was speechless. He hasn't argued with me since. Our next story, senior boy wouldn't stop tormenting me. So I chucked his entire, accumulative, end-of-the-year report in the trash, causing him to fail. The title pretty much spells it out. The year I was a senior in high school, I was in the journalism class, writing and illustrating monthly for the newspaper. I was a neurospicy weirdo then, as I am a neurospicy weirdo now, and thus an easy target as the lowest rung within the social hierarchy of teens. This one boy in the journalism class was horrible. He would regularly call me names, poke at my appearance, spit in my hair, trip me as I walked by, openly get others to laugh my way, and constantly and loudly belittle my work. He wouldn't stop. As we neared the end of the semester, with graduation a few weeks away, we had a huge final coming up, an accumulated folder that needed to include every single piece of work we had completed over the year. Absent work took off points. No work meant a fail. After a particularly terrible day of the boy picking on me again, I was the last person in class, ready to close up for the day, when I spotted his folder in our class workstation. I had been wondering how I could stick up for myself or get him back, and there was the answer right in front of me. Completely not fully premeditated, I stuffed his folder in my bag, walked out of the classroom, and then chucked it in the dumpster that was behind the nearby Starbucks. Without his folder, plus his general slack-off behavior, he failed the course and had to take summer classes to make up for the lost communications credit. Our next story, the manager threw a hissy fit because I wouldn't answer questions about my private life. I'm training as a car salesman, and the lady in charge of finance, not my manager, started asking me about my wife in a very rapid-fire manner, like a cop would. She asked the following: where does she work? Which store? I'm gonna go there. Full-time? What's her name? Show me photos. At this point, I told her to calm down and questioned her third-degree interrogation. She threw a fit, acted like I had been rude, and said later on, you need to watch what you say to both customers and me. I'm your manager. I told her I'd be more careful, and she said, yeah, you be careful, in a threatening tone. I'm pretty annoyed because I don't understand where she gets off feeling so entitled to my personal information, especially when it was inquired in such a rude manner. I wasn't even rude to her, though my anger made me want to call her a nosy busybody. Our next story, don't like the way I park? Fine, I'll follow the rules exactly. A couple of months ago, I had a run-in with a self-appointed HOA enforcer of my neighborhood. Let's call her Linda. For context, I don't live in an HOA community, but Linda likes to pretend we do. She's the kind of person who leaves passive-aggressive notes on cars, knocks on doors to complain about lawn heights, and calls the city for violations that don't actually exist. The issue started because I parked my car on the street in front of my house. It's perfectly legal, and I've been doing it for years without any complaints. But apparently, Linda decided that my car was an eyesore. One day, I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper that said, "This is not a parking lot. Park in your driveway like a respectful neighbor. Don't make me involve the city." It annoyed me, but I shrugged it off and kept parking where I always do. That wasn't good enough for Linda. The next time, she confronted me in person. "Linda, I've told you before, parking on the street is inconsiderate. You have a driveway, use it." Me, "It's legal to park here, and I'm not blocking anything." Linda, "It doesn't matter. It's ugly and makes the neighborhood look bad. Park in your driveway, or I'll report you." That's when I decided, fine. If she wants me to park in my driveway, I'll park in my driveway, but I'll follow every single rule to the letter. You see, my driveway is small. If I park my car in it, it blocks the sidewalk. Technically, it's against city ordinances to obstruct the sidewalk. So the next day, I pulled my car right into my driveway, perfectly centered, and guess what? It completely blocked the sidewalk. It didn't take long for Linda to notice. She marched up to my door, red-faced and furious. "Linda, you can't block the sidewalk. That's illegal." Me, "Oh, I thought you wanted me to park in my driveway." Linda, "Not like that. Park properly." Me, "There's no other way to park in my driveway without blocking the sidewalk. Guess I'll have to park back on the street then." Her face was priceless. She sputtered for a moment before stomping off. Thinking that was the end of it, I parked back on the street. But no, Linda wasn't done yet. She actually called the city on me. A week later, a city inspector came by. He checked out the situation, saw that my car was legally parked on the street, and told me I was doing nothing wrong. However, he did mention that Linda had made several complaints about code violations in the neighborhood, and they were getting tired of her nonsense. After that, I didn't hear from Linda for a while, until last week, when she started parking her car on the street in front of my house. So, I did what any good neighbor would do. I called the city and reported it. Turns out her car was slightly too close to a fire hydrant. She got a ticket. Malicious compliance never felt so sweet. Our next story, husband, 36 meters, said something that broke my 39F heart. How do I process it? This is rather long. But bear with me, please. Husband, 36 male, and I, 39 female, have been together for 12 years, 8 married, and have a 2-year-old. In the beginning, we talked about being a child-free couple, and that was fine with me. When COVID hit, I took a look at my life and saw that we both had stable jobs, didn't have any grand plans, to buy a house, to change professions, and thought that a kid wouldn't really interfere with whatever life plans we had or would have. We talked at length about trying to conceive, and how a kid would give us a different experience out of our lives that seemed already so settled. In the next 6 months, I got pregnant 3 times. The first was an anembryonic pregnancy. The egg gets fertilized and implants into the uterus but doesn't develop into an embryo. The next month, I got pregnant, but had a miscarriage at 10 weeks. It was easily the worst days of my life. Then, the very next month, I got pregnant again. And 39 weeks later, we had our baby boy. The first 3 months were a whirlwind of sleep deprivation, chaotic days with me crying, the baby not nursing properly. He was admitted with jaundice for lack of feeding, had a tongue tie, and torticollis. It was one of the most challenging periods of our life. We spent a lot on medical bills. We didn't have any support from family nor friends. We have a cleaning lady that comes in once a week. Our baby boy was one of those that would fuss for over an hour to get down to nap just to rest for 30 to 40 minutes, and would only sleep while nursed. I was fully on baby duty and exhausted. Husband was the one doing groceries and most of the meals, doing dishes, laundry. I went back to work at 7 months. We decided to hire a nanny. My husband rose to the part and took care of the baby by himself on weekends and holidays. I am an essential worker, work on the subway, and have a work schedule of 3x2, work 3 days in and off for 2, sometimes the 3 days in are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I know this is hard on him because he's all by himself with our son until the nanny arrives or for most of the weekend. I work a 10-hour shift, from 5 a.m. until 3 p.m. To ease things for him, when I arrive, I take the shortest shower you've ever seen, don't wash my hair on weekends, and take the baby duty until bedtime, when he comes in and reads a book. Fast forward 2 years, and things have improved a ton. A 2-year-old is such a different kid. He's so smart, asks for whatever snacks he wants, has his favorite books, is learning how to ride a balance bike, and even states when he's tired and needs a rest, takes 2 to 2.5 hour long naps, yay. I feel that motherhood changed me a lot. For the better. I'm in awe of how he's developing, how much his vocabulary is improving by the day, how smart and fun/funny he is. He has the sweetest voice, gives the warmest of hugs, has the best laughter. I'm so in love, so infatuated by this tiny human that I made. So the fairy of motherly amnesia knocked on my door and I started talking about having a second baby. When I said this, his first response was, "I still don't know if I want our first one. Can't imagine a second." His wording was so weird to me. He's the best of dads. Not only does he pull his weight around the house, but he is also so caring and fun with our son. I appreciate him so much. I always say what a good husband and father he is. As the days went by, I tried talking about the topic of a second child with different approaches, asking what he thinks having a girl would be different than a boy, if he likes the names Andre and Lavinia, if we would get pregnant easily again. Well, the other day, I was playing with our son in the living room, just soaking up how amazing he is, and said something like, "How incredible is he?" When I think about living a whole life without getting to know him, I realize now how much I would miss having this opportunity, living these moments, and wouldn't even know it. Because there's no way you can actually know what this is like. I wouldn't have lived a sad life or felt anything lacking, but this is a better life. He then said something along the lines of, "I miss my old life. I miss waking up naturally. The baby wakes up at 6 a.m. tops. I miss having me time, miss being alone in the house and watching a 3-hour-long documentary, miss not spending so much money, not having to go grocery shopping all the time, and not being so tired every day." I said that I miss some of it too, but understood that all these changes were transitory, that things have improved so much in 2 years, and he's growing up so fast, and in no time we would have that life back, that in the grand scheme, we would be more parents of an adult than parents of a toddler/child, that in a few years, we would objectively have the same life as his brother and Sil, who don't want kids. He said that just because it would look like the same life, doesn't mean I would feel the same. Yes, in 20 years, We'll be driving the same route but took different paths to get there, and for sure his, brother's, path had way less stress, fewer worries, with more liberty and money. Once you're a parent, there's no looking back. You are forced to live a very different life. I love our son. He's smart, and very cute, but I would take it back. I think my brother's life will be smoother, with a ton of sleep, freedom, and overall happier. I just stood there processing his words. I love our life. I mistakenly thought that, because we are a couple, we were living and feeling the same things. I know I am seeing life with rose-colored glasses, that maybe he didn't think all of it so endearing, but I never thought that our views were drastically different. Later that day, I apologized for trying to push the subject of a second baby. I said that I hadn't realized that he viewed things this way, and understood now that for him, another kid was a hard no, and wouldn't bring up the topic again. He said thank you. I don't know if I should bring this conversation up and understand better what he said. I see him laughing and complimenting our kid and question whether it is genuine or not. I believe actions are louder than words. He's being his typical self, very loving, always kissing us, cooking our favorite dishes, making plans to travel to a farm hotel so our son can meet some animals, but his words shook me. That's it for now. See you in the next post.